Hey bosses, this week's sponsor is Buddy Insure. We'll tell you more about them during the break.
Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, where we interview location-independent entrepreneurs that travel the world like a boss by being their own boss. Here's your host, Johnny FD.
Hey bosses, this is Johnny and welcome to episode 254 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I'm here with Johannes Voelkner, the founder of Nomad Cruise. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So you are in your home base in Mallorca, Spain. I'm in Sri Lanka. How's it out there?
Mallorca is good. So there have been recently quite a few things with lockdown starting here again. But in Mallorca, the situation is pretty good and it's beautiful. Actually, it's almost 40 degrees today. It's like a heat wave here at the moment. So normally the weather is just fine and perfect.
Wow. And how far are you from the beach?
I'm 20 minutes walk.
Okay. Oh, fantastic.
And I'm 10 meters from the harbor.
Oh, wow. Okay. So at least you can cool down and you have that ocean breeze as well.
Yes, I do.
And were you there during this whole lockdown the last couple of months?
Yes, I was here the whole time. And actually it was a really crazy lockdown because we really could only leave like once a week to go to the shop. But in the end, it was nice. We have a really huge roof terrace here, and there's another friend of mine living in the same building. So we just always met up there and walked like 10 kilometers on the top of the roof. So that was my lockdown period.
Wow.
Doing walks 10 kilometers on the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. But at least you had that rooftop terrace. I was very lucky also to have kind of an empty rooftop and a balcony as well. I think if it wasn't for that, I would have went crazy.
Yeah, yes. I saw like all the people next door and like being locked completely in, and I felt really lucky that we were in that nice position here.
Yeah, nice. But you said that they're starting to lock down Mallorca again, or all of Spain?
In Spain, they're not really locked down, but they just try to have more higher restrictions now because the cases are going up. So they just want to avoid more trouble. But in Mallorca is not affected, but it's more like the mainland of Spain, like Barcelona.
Yeah, I think the biggest fear of travelers right now, places are starting to open up. And I, too, was thinking, oh, you know what, I've been in Sri Lanka now for almost 6 months. Maybe it's time to go to Europe, spend the last few months of summer there. But my fear, and I think the fear of a lot of travelers, is you get somewhere and then you get locked down there and you're thinking, oh crap, well, like now what?
Well, I mean, I think in general you can almost always fly back to your home country. So that's always an option. And you know a little bit in advance. I mean, you can always see how things develop, right? So if you're seeing that the numbers are going up, then like it doesn't happen from one day to the next. But yeah, it makes it all complicated. Like the nomad life is not as it used to be, right?
Yeah, things have drastically changed. And that's actually the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is I was honestly like very optimistic that things would go back to normal. And every time I would hear people say travel will never be the same, nomad life will never be the same, I was also thinking, you know, like give it a few months, like everything's going to be fine. And it didn't really hit me. I mean, I knew, you know, I knew there was, you know, economic damages, and I know a lot of things have changed, but it didn't really hit me until I saw that article that the 2 Pullmantur cruise ships were being sent to the scrapyard and completely dismantled. And this is a boat that I was on for 10 days on one of the Nomad cruises.
Yeah, it's these things happen, right? Like the whole cruise industry is kind of finished right now, but I mean, I was expecting this to happen, that one day they will, you know, dismantle them and stuff, because these were the ships that were like in the last place where they were used. Like cruise ships are usually being passed down from company to company and brand to brand. But yeah, that was a tough thing. Like we organized 10 cruises over the last years, and now pretty much all the ships that we have been on are being destroyed and sent to the scrapyard.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't know if people can imagine what that means, but they're sending these boats to a harbor somewhere, probably in Bangladesh, where labor law is a little bit less strict. Is it or Turkey?
Yeah.
And there's people physically going. I mean, first they clear out the furniture and they sell that, but then there's people physically just like cutting off pieces of the ship to sell as scrap metal and just like melting it down for steel or for metal. It'd be like us taking apart like a nice house or a nice hotel. Like imagine the house that you grew up in being just knocked down and sold for scrap wood. And it wasn't a bad boat. I mean, it was a bit older, but it was still a comfortable boat.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the maintenance cost of cruise ships, that is actually the real cost of the whole thing, right? So just to keep it alive, to let the engines run, and like it still always needs to be in movement. And if they don't know even for 1 year what they're going to be doing, and they already had the plans, probably like they know that the entire cruise ship industry is affected. So yeah, there was not much that they could do about it, I think.
Yeah, and I think when we look into it more, like financially, it makes sense, but it just seems so real now that a boat that we have spent, quite a bit of time on, and you a lot more than anyone else. But I mean, even the 10 days that I was on the boat, or the 14 days I was on the boat, it felt like, it felt real. Like it felt like a place. I ate, however many meals there. I ate like 30 meals there. I slept in that room, in that bed, and it's now gone. It really feels like real now to me. It feels like my childhood home. I don't know why it hit me so hard, but it feels like, because it wasn't just the boat. It was the community of all the friends I made there, all the experiences I had, and this whole idea of nomad life and the nomad cruise sent to a scrapyard in Turkey. It really makes it real.
Yes, a lot of people always say when they come back on the cruise, it feels a bit like coming home to their family, right? So this was quite a big shock for a lot of people. For me, there was also a shock, but I have to be honest that I saw this oftentimes also a place where I'm stressed out, because I was organizing the cruises, and sometimes it worked really well, but sometimes not. So I did not have this hard goodbye. But but for a lot of people, this was really a crazy thing. Yeah.
Ironically, I feel the same about the Nomad Summit. So we had to cancel our most recent conference in Tbilisi, Georgia, and it wasn't just that we had to postpone it. I mean, we'll probably still have it, but next summer. But for a while, I was actually thinking, at first I was like, everything's gonna be fine in a few months, so we postponed it until August. But then we saw that they're probably not gonna open up by August, and if they do, there's gonna be a lot of restrictions. So very few people are gonna be able to go. And we thought, maybe we should push it back again until, October. And we did a poll in the Facebook group, and people were like, look, like, it's probably not going to open again. Let's stop getting our hopes up for this year. 2020 is not going to be the year for in-person conferences, especially with over 100 people. Let's just try for next summer. And in my mind, it was honestly a huge relief, because for the last probably 5 years since I've been doing the Nomad Summits, they've been, even though they're, once or twice a year, it feels like they're back to back, because once one finishes, we need to have the next one kind of planned already, because I'm sure, just like with the Nomad Cruise, as soon as one is not even finished, but like midway through, people were asking, when is the next one? Where are we going? What are the dates? And it was the same for the Nomad Summit. So I had to start planning it.
It also made me decide, like, this whole situation now, if we ever do the cruise again, that it will only be a 1 year thing, because it was just like the last 5 years were really crazy. I was organizing one event after another, and basically usually in the same week when the cruise was over, we already prepared the launch for the next cruise, because we needed to kind of keep up the momentum. And yeah, that was just really, it was an interesting period where I've learned a lot, but where I've also afterwards decided when this lockdown and all this situation came that I will take things, do things a lot different in the future. And yeah, and not gonna stress myself out again from one event to the other like this.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's a little bit of a blessing for us as event organizers to have it forcibly stopped. And luckily, these events, both the Nomad Cruise and the Nomad Summit, were not our full-time, or even it was our full-time responsibilities, but it wasn't our primary income. Both of us have our actual businesses that actually pay us, while the Nomad Cruise and the Nomad Summit, in the beginning, both of them were, breaking even, sometimes losing money, and then on a good year when everything went well, then it started to be profitable, but then we're paying more staff because it's growing, and then paying for more expenses. And there's just the amount of time. I mean, I don't know if you ever calculated how much you actually earned per hour that you were working for building these cruises, but for the Nomad Summit, I was definitely making like minimum wage or something, planning these big events, and sometimes losing money, when I could have just been working on my own businesses and making way more.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, like what I was thinking always with the Nomad Cruise was that this is something where I work for the future, right? Like it just gets a little bit bigger every year. And of course now the whole cruise industry, like that stuff is not working anymore. But, I always like reinvested everything into the like growing this business and like optimizing this conference experience to really bring people together. But yeah, so if I would calculate that down to hourly wage, especially now that we had to cancel one cruise, I don't want to know that number.
Yeah, it's hard. So like this last cruise, did you have like a lot of people already prepaid and booked? Like what did you have to do with that?
Yeah, we had about 150 people and before the cruise, and then we also started to see that sales were not going so well because the whole Corona thing, like conversation started in January, and at one point, yeah, it just got more and more crazy. So then in March, I basically decided, about 2 weeks before all the lockdowns happened, I decided that we're not going to do this. And yeah, but I couldn't even talk to the cruise ship company because they didn't reply to us. So we basically canceled the cruise without any communication to the company, and hoping that we don't need to pay these things in the end. And then we refunded everyone. And I was really lucky that we haven't, even though we had 150 bookings, we had not paid anything, which was like not the plan, but like we were lucky that we kind of kept the money on our side and that at that moment. So I did not lose all these things, because now the company where we were organizing the cruise with is also insolvent. So I don't know, if you ever get something like this back.
Wow. Yeah, this is really hard. And this is something that most attendees never even think about, is as a conference organizer, we have to put down a lot of prepayments or non-refundable deposits, usually up to 50% or higher, like months before, sometimes up to a year before, if you want to lock in those dates. And this is why normally there's no refunds for conferences. I know for us, we allow name changes up to 48 hours before the conference. During those last 2 days, it's just too crazy to try to change names. But we try to be very flexible so people can give their ticket to a friend or sell it to someone else. But the reason why we normally don't allow refunds at all is because we've already paid that money to the hotel. I mean, for us, in Chiang Mai or in Mexico, we had to wire the money months before. First they want 50% as soon as we announce it, so it can be 6 months before, and then they want the second payment 1 or 2 months before the conference. And then sometimes we can negotiate could we pay the last third on the day of? But sometimes I've already paid everything, before the conference even starts. And if we had to issue refunds, like we wouldn't get any of that money back, and it would literally just bankrupt the company, and all that would come out of my pocket. And it could be a lot of money for a big conference with 300 people. So it's not, I know it's not fair to the attendee if the event gets canceled because of Corona or something that's unexpected, but it's also not fair to the conference company, to take all that risk as well. So yeah. It's a tricky situation. I know some people say like, oh, why don't you get insurance for it? I mean, first, like, if we did, like, ticket prices would be much more expensive and people wouldn't want to pay it. But second, there's not really conference insurance unless you're like, some big, $1 million concert. And even then they often don't cover things like, the coronavirus.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is in general that oftentimes people don't really see the risk that the organizer is always organizing these conferences, and how much time and effort to get people to a place. And then they oftentimes, like, they complain about prices, but I'm pretty sure that most, in general, most event organizers, they don't make much profits at all. And then in the moment they do make profits, then they, in my opinion, they have well deserved it, because they took all that risk to go this route, right, and organize these events. So oftentimes this is a bit overseen, and if you do like too much on refunds, actually the thing is that it makes it too easy for people to cancel, and that could risk the entire event. So there's no way to give refunds, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, a lot of people don't realize why we give things like early bird discounts, and it's really because we need like a head count. We need, usually we need kind of like a guarantee of, that we know that the first 100 people are dedicated to come, or, like whatever the minimum is. I know for our conference rooms, we'll have a minimum person guarantee and then a maximum kind of, seating capacity, where that's why the prices start, at very low or at half price, and then they slowly go up towards the conference. And it's the reason why, like, the month of or the week of the conference, the prices go to, an expensive amount, not because we're trying to be greedy, but because it's really hard to squeeze in, 50 extra seats, after everything's already booked, and we're already at maximum capacity.
And usually that's also where you make the profit, right? Make the profit in the tickets you sell the last month or the last 2 months. And in the beginning, it's really just to cover the costs and to get people on board. Like, the more early bird tickets you sell, the more you have people actually helping you to market the event, right? Because they say like, hey, I'm going to the summit. And then it helps get everyone on board. So you basically hire your own marketers.
Yeah. I mean, basically, like, for us, the super early bird specials, we're not making money from these guys. I mean, they're basically coming for free in exchange for them committing and buying a ticket early. So we know we'll have at least 100 people, that are going to come. And then, as you said, they kind of get the ball rolling. So other people, hear like, oh, like, you're going to go? Okay. Maybe I'll think about going too. And then the people who wait until the last minute, they're not doing us any favors because they're making our job like harder. So, I don't want to say that they deserve to pay more, but that is just the way that, conferences work, where like the people who, you get rewarded for buying early and taking that risk yourself.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if you don't have early bird tickets, everyone would wait till last minute, and then it would be impossible to organize the event. So you need kind of everyone. You need to have the margin at the end of the day when you sell the tickets, right? And you also need to have the people who commit early so that you can cover costs.
Hey bosses, you can now venture fearlessly with a partner, Buddy Insurance. You are covered in the event of an accident while you're active, be it on the slopes, on the rocks, or in the water. Buddy is the first and only on-demand insurance in the market. The only one. If you ever wondered what a bad fall on the slopes would cost you, Buddy will answer that question for you in no time. It's the only accident coverage you can get for as little as a day or as long as a year. No old-fashioned phone calls. Buddy gets you covered in approximately 90 seconds on the website. It's literally designed for adventurers, risk takers, and bosses who are active in life. You can get a free quote with the code BuddyInsure. Simply text the word BuddyInsure to 474747 to receive the link. Again, get a free quote with the code BuddyInsure. Just text the word BuddyInsure to 474747 and follow the link. So, I think I took a lot of risks personally these last couple of years with the Nomad Summit, and sometimes we actually end up losing money for our Cancun conference. We ended up losing, I think it was about $8,000. So it was basically me doing work for 5 months, flying to Mexico, flying in my team, and then we ended up having a negative month after I paid the salaries, people's salaries for the marketing, for all the food, all that stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm not doing this again. This is it. This is the last time. Let's just have fun this weekend. But during that weekend, so many people came up to me and said, Johnny, thanks so much for organizing this. And they would tell me stories like, I've been wanting to be a nomad for so long. I've been working remotely, but at home in somewhere in the U.S., usually or Canada, and I've been wanting to take the first leap, but I was nervous because I didn't know anyone. And if it wasn't for your conference, I never would have left. I put this on my calendar and I said, 6 months from now, I'm whatever it takes, I'm gonna get there. And the same for Chiang Mai too. And it was those stories and those people that made me realize, you know what, I'm in a very unique position where this is something that I really enjoy doing, I'm good at doing, and I can afford to take the risk. And hopefully, the goal was for it to become a massively profitable event sometime in the future, before this Corona thing hit. But it was a hard gamble.
Yeah. It's always like this, right? It's always good to have something else on the side when you do these kinds of events.
Yeah, and I really liked your talk at the Nomad Summit, actually just this past January. If anyone wants to check it out, it's on YouTube. The full talk's on there for free. Just look for Nomad Summit, Johannes Voelkner. It's called Building a Remote Business While Traveling. And it was Johannes's kind of story about how he started the Nomad Cruise, but also how he makes money, how you actually earn money besides with the cruise to be able to fund all this.
Yeah. So I also did, when I started out, I also did start an e-commerce business where I partnered with my mom and helped her to sell cards for therapy. And this worked really, really well. And this business is still actually working really nicely. And especially in the Corona days, we did really well. So oftentimes what I can just also recommend people, like there's always people, like always products that people are really, really passionate about, right? Like they want to, do some Nomad products or some yoga or whatever, but oftentimes it's much easier to do a business where you're going into things that are not necessarily so exciting, but you will have much more margins and profitability usually.
And also way less competition.
And way less competition, and it's there's also like a lot of nice things people like. I mean, this product that we're selling, like we get amazing feedback for it and stuff, but I just want to say, like, oftentimes we're always trying, to work on something that we are really passionate about. But the question is, how long is that passion always going to last for things that we are passionate about at the moment? And then oftentimes these types of real passions, if you make it into a business, it doesn't. It's much harder, and it's much harder to monetize. And it oftentimes also takes much more time because the competition is so huge.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, the funny thing is, with the same amount of effort I put into the Nomad Summit, if I had started a conference, or if I pivot to a conference really about any other topic, all right? Like if I created an investing conference, or a learning languages conference, or a learning how to like, even if I just picked one niche, like just a dropshipping conference, I would make so much more money than a kind of general Nomad Summit. But the reason why I like it is it brings people together, and just like the Nomad Cruise, is it brings people together from all different business aspects, all different backgrounds, all different countries. And the topics are so widely ranged, from different types of online business to remote workers to entrepreneurs, but also to people who are just starting out, people who are established. It kind of just brings everyone together, and I think it's a really nice community.
Yeah. No, it's a good it's a good thing, but it's always good to focus on things that are, to have like both something difficult and something easy to work on.
Yeah. So my advice to anyone, if you want to start a conference, or actually any business, is niche down. Like if I changed Nomad Summit to like copywriting summit, I would make so much more money. It'd be so much easier to find speakers, on the same subject, so much easier to do workshops. I can charge way more money, and it would just be a way easier life.
Exactly. Yeah, the nomad life, like in the sense of having this as a business, it's just the nomads. They're so smart. They know how to get everything everywhere for almost nothing. So it's really, you have to provide so much value in order to do anything there. And because also the topic is not too specific, you cannot like really go into depth. Like if you would do a copywriting conference, you would really bring together people who have all the same ambitions, and the nomads is always like very broad type of people. So that makes it also sometimes much harder to actually bring that value, right? That you can bring when you're going really into a focus on topics.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that having this kind of wide range of people, really, it's good for building friendships. It's good for opening our minds, and ultimately, we end up doing better in both our our business life as well as our kind of normal life, because we're exposed to people from all different backgrounds, instead of just being in an echo chamber of just people who are interested in Bitcoin, for example.
Yes, for sure. It's a much nicer, like diverse group in that sense.
Yeah. So that's the really the only thing I'm gonna miss from all this, and I would almost rather have someone else just organize it and have me be a speaker there, or even just as an attendee. And this is why I liked going to Nomad Cruise so much, is because even though it's funny, a lot of people actually thought I was somehow working with the Nomad Cruise or involved in it, kind of business wise. But I was like, no, I literally just went as an attendee, and then I was like, okay, if I'm gonna be there anyways, I might as well give a talk. But I really liked not having any responsibility while I was there.
Yeah, I also like to go to events where I have nothing to do.
Yeah. So if in a few months, or maybe next year, if cruising starts opening up again and it starts, things, start getting lifted, start lifting up, will you be excited? Will you plan another Nomad Cruise? Would you take that risk and that investment of planning another one, or would you wait a few years to see, how it pans out? Like, what would your plan be?
So I think I would do a cruise. I would never do more than one per year, again. And the way how I would do it is I would just send out a survey, and I would just check if people are interested and what is the general mood. That is something that everyone should do in general, right? Like see what is the interest at this moment. And when I have a good feeling that we can sell like a lot of cabins without too much, that we need to go and invest money into marketing, then I'm happy to organize it again. But I will just wait for the time, and when the time is right, I will send out this email and say, like, guys, are you happy to go again? And then we'll do it.
That's very smart. And that's actually another good point you brought up is with the marketing, that money isn't recouped. So even if we can negotiate to get a refund from our deposits from the cruise line or the hotel venue, things like marketing and also paying the staff to even manage it, that is sunk costs. So that's thousands of dollars that basically got people's attention. So they heard about the cruise or heard about the Nomad Summit, and then they bought the ticket. But if we refund 100% of the ticket, all that money that we had spent on marketing, literally, $3,000+ and plus the monthly salary of whoever is running those ads and, who's on the team. And then also the person who has to answer the emails to even do to answer the questions about like what's happening with the cancellations and then to issue the refunds. All that is money that is we never see again. So people are happy they get their $300 or $500 or $1,000 back, but really like we're also losing money just giving that refund. It's not like we just give the money back.
Yeah, I could have bought a nice car, like the money that I lost because we had to cancel the cruise. Like we had spent quite a lot of money actually in marketing in the States because it was like a new market, and there were not so many people who like know us there, except from your audience, of course. And so we had spent quite a bit of money into this, and we made new websites and stuff. And this is all things that I basically will never get back from the last cruise.
Wow. So you're talking like more than $10,000.
Yeah, way more.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Nah, it's okay. I don't mind. But yeah, it was quite a bit that we lost there because we had already like prepared quite a bit and invited even some speakers and stuff. And that was things that I could have bought a decent car. Yeah.
Yeah. And not like a used Honda Civic, but like a nice new car.
Like a new car, yes.
Yeah, man, that really sucks. I was pretty lucky that this Tbilisi conference, first, it was still so far away, but second, it was one of the first times I partnered with the venue itself. So we partnered with Fabrica, which is kind of like a co-working, co-living hotel, hostel kind of concept. It's very similar to Selena. You've been a couple of those, right?
Yeah.
So in Mexico, we partnered with the Selena, but we still had to rent the actual convention center because they didn't have a stage. So it ended up saving us some money on, some things like the workshop rooms and the pool party, but we still had to pay for the convention center. But in Tbilisi, we had a deal with Fabrica where we were basically going to have everyone stay there, which is better for kind of networking and hanging out anyways, almost kind of some of the benefits of the cruise where everyone's eating together, hanging out together. But we were able to use their seminar room for free. So I was very, very lucky we didn't have a deposit on that. So the money that we lost was, like staffing costs, the marketing costs. And I actually, at the end, it was me and one other person answering all the emails, like, for months, like is it going to be postponed? Like, what's going on? And I had decided, I was like, you know what? I'm sure more than 50% of the people would say, oh, just hold on to the money for the next, and we'll transfer it to the next event. But I realized, you know what? It's going to be so much easier if I just go down the list and just refund every single person 100% and not even spend the money and the time dealing with the email and customer service. So I ended up losing quite a bit of money, issuing that. But at the end of the day, it was just less of a headache for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we did that too. We refunded everyone. But for example, there was one other event in the States where I was going to go to a cruise, and it was a really expensive ticket, and they did not do this. So I got quite mad at them because I thought, like, I mean, you're organizing a thing on a cruise ship that obviously it's not going to happen, and you want to postpone the event, but you don't want to refund. So, yeah, I didn't want to be that person, but I get really mad when they did this with me and just still have my money today.
Yeah, and it's hard, because there's not like a set date of, oh, don't worry, next May it's happening for sure, because with the cruise line industry, it's really, really up in the air if it's going to happen in 2021 or 2022 or maybe later.
Yeah, it's very hard to say exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this works out. But yeah, I think that, we're gonna. Yeah, I would like to organize a cruise sometime, but see when the time is right.
Yeah, that's good. So the only two people we didn't refund is our two sponsors, and luckily they were both super cool and on board. And they're like, yeah, just we understand. Hold on to it for the next one. So I want to give a shout out to Hyperskew and E-Residency of Estonia, because they basically said, don't worry, you just transfer the sponsorship to the next event. And thank God, because that would have been even more negative in my bank account if they had tried to negotiate something.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, but for them, they get like a full year of free sponsorship. Whenever someone goes to nomadsummit.com, they see it on there. So if anything, like they're probably happy.
When do you plan to do the next event? What do you have in mind? Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, so we pushed it back to mid-May of 2021, so we can do Tbilisi again. Some people really wanted me to do another Chiang Mai one this January, because we normally have it every January. But yeah. I don't think things are going to open. The hotel even emailed me, the Shangri-La, saying, "Hey, you coming back again?" And yeah. I wrote them. I said, "Look, to be honest, like I would like to, but I'm not going to risk putting down $10,000 as a deposit, or even just wasting the time and money collecting the payments, because even just like accepting payments ends up costing less money, especially if they refund it later." So I told them, and the kind of official stance is, if everything opens back up at least 3 months beforehand, and there's not really much restrictions, everything's okay, then I would consider doing another conference in this year, in December or January. But most likely, we're not going to do one until next May.
Mm. Or you could do like a super spontaneous one, but then it would be just way smaller and doesn't really make sense, no?
Yeah, because part of the fun of the Nomad Summit is, and also Nomad Cruise, is there's always 200, 300, 400 people there. I think 400 is actually a little bit too big, to be honest, but I think both for the cruise and the summit, around 300 is kind of like a magical number where you can still meet everyone, but there's so many people to meet and hang out with. So it's good energy.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I try to do I do some little meetups soon, but organizing events or whatsoever, we just really need to wait until we have 3 quiet months of not news changing and travel bans, and then it's possible to do stuff, and then probably the whole world will organize events in the same month. So that is also going to be an interesting thing how this will play out.
Yeah, and I do think that you're right, where once everything starts opening up, there's going to be like a flood of events because everyone wants to, get together again. But during this lockdown, I've actually, personally, I've become more of an introvert. I think you've always known me as a very extroverted person. Mm-hmm. But the last 5 months, I've been in isolation for the first 3 months. I mean, for the first month, I was with one person in the whole building for I think 2 months. And then I was for one whole month completely alone. And I started to really like it. And it's weird. Now I'm traveling again as with friends. I'm dating someone. But even then, I don't want to go out and be surrounded with a bunch of people. I'm not even excited to, host meetups or, even attend, gatherings. I'm just like, you know what? I'm okay just hanging out with one or two friends, having like small get-togethers, and that's it.
Yeah, it's also nice, no? It's something especially that I had after the cruises when there were so many people around that I just really like to have like really small conversations, not more than 4 people.
Yeah, because I imagine you as more of an introvert, right?
It depends like in what environment I am and who I'm around with, and I'm like more reserved definitely when it's a lot of like new people and I need to like start the conversations from scratch, versus things can be a little bit different when it's a smaller group.
Yeah, but it is kind of curious why someone who seems a bit more introverted would start something like the Nomad Cruise and want to be around that many people.
So my biggest problem was always that I was traveling, and in the beginning I really loved it, but after a while I started to get really annoyed by these conversations, right? Because it was always like the same conversations between the travelers, and I was not, like it didn't excite me to talk about accents or whatsoever anymore. And that actually made me, I think, what's a bit more introverted, because I just wasn't really so interested being part of this anymore. And I just wanted to connect to people who are thinking about the same stuff like me. And that was my drive to create the cruise, because I just wanted to be around people who are also like digital nomads and who are doing this, because I had traveled with a few nomads before I organized the cruise, and I always thought it was really, really fun. But of course, like at the moment, it's not. I mean, I'm the organizer, but I have met so many people, and I'm also getting sometimes a little bit tired of talking about the same things in the nomad life, right? So it's every time, like when you had something or when you've been going some route for a longer time, then you kind of take yourself out of this a little bit. So, but in the beginning, I just really wanted to be around people who were thinking the same like me, and like lots of them, so that that I can choose who I want to be around with, I think that was my drive, because it was actually really hard to meet anyone like this before.
For me, it was exactly the same. Even though Chiang Mai, this was back in, I started in 2013, and it was hard to get 5 other people together who had a similar mindset. I think there was, there might have been more than 10 digital nomads or entrepreneurs in Chiang Mai back then, but you wouldn't meet them. So it wasn't until I think it was 2014, maybe 2015, where there started to be, these kind of digital nomad meetups, but they were all either part of like a paid community, like the DC, where you had to pay every month to be part of it, and then not everyone had access. Or it was always at a bar, or some loud, like nightclub venue, where you would meet each other, but you couldn't really talk or learn from each other, exchange ideas. And I was really frustrated, thinking, man, like in this room of 40 people, there's a lot of knowledge we can share and learn from each other. Why doesn't someone just organize something where we have a projector, we have a like not even a microphone, just like some chairs and maybe some coffee, and learn from each other. And that's why I started the Nomad Summit. But I continued it because I don't like calling it networking, because it sounds so contrived and enforced. But the connections and the friendships that you make at a paid conference, even if it's not a super expensive paid conference, it doesn't need to be like a $10,000 or even a $1,000 conference. It's just any kind of paid conference or event. It attracts a different level of people who are more serious about learning, and usually actually more successful people, or people who will become more successful than the free meetups, or especially the online, or just like, talking on a Facebook group or something. Like at the people at the Nomad Cruise that I met, the people at Nomad Summit that I met, people at all the paid events that I've personally attended, those people in general are way more successful than just the people I talk to online, on Reddit, in Facebook groups, or at the free meetups, just because I think they're just more dedicated.
Yeah, I mean, they want it more, right? Like they're more interested in these things, like making that thing work. And actually that there's a lot to just organizing more paid things than versus free. I used to organize a lot of free meetups as well in Tarifa and like in Spain at the same time when you started in Chiang Mai. But I also noticed after a while that I was doing this but it didn't get me, like, people just did that. Like, it didn't get me anywhere. And at the end of the day, like, even if you're organizing the free events, if you're switching to other types of events or whatsoever, then most of the people, you're going to lose them again one day, right? So that is also that's one tip that I have for people. Like, if you're thinking that in the beginning you just do a lot of things for free and you organize a lot of free things for people, in the moment when you switch to be more paid, you're going to lose a lot of the work that you've actually done in the past. So it might make some sense after a while, like, to make this switch very early and not wait too long.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I also noticed, like, for example, in Chiang Mai, I started the Nomad Coffee Club every Friday, and for 5 years it's been pretty much every Friday, and it's always been free. And sometimes you would get some really good people in attendance. Sometimes you get some really good speakers. But in general, it's just like, people who are new in town or just, happen to want to come. Like the people who are already very successful in their business, the people who are, already making six figures, they have definitely come, but they don't come every week. They kind of just come like once in a blue moon, or like once, like when they feel like it. And a lot of them, I asked, like, why don't you come more often? They're like, I don't really need to go. And I was like, I know, but like, it's fun, right? Why don't you just come? And they're like, honestly, like, I don't want to be around a bunch of people who are asking me stupid questions and then not taking action once I spend my time to tell them like what they should do. And the reason why they go to the Nomad Summit every year is because they know that if they're going to spend 5 minutes, sharing a tip with someone, that person's probably going to actually do it. They're the type that, like, I think it's a different mentality. Like the people who won't pay for anything and expect everything kind of for free, usually they're very pessimistic. They're always kind of looking for why something won't work. And they're always looking for more free information or better free information instead of just taking the advice and doing it. While people who are willing to pay for something, whether it's a course or a conference, usually they have a more of an abundant mindset where they think, oh, okay, let me see what works and, let me just try it. And if it works, I'll continue doing it. Maybe I'll pivot. Maybe it's not, necessarily for me, but let me, like, if someone is successful and they're giving me some advice, maybe I'll actually take the time to listen to it instead of thinking of all the reasons why it doesn't work, or just wanting more and more information before even taking action.
Yeah, you have to pay money to make money, right? That's the thing, oftentimes.
Yeah. So I'm personally a little bit sad that all these conferences that I normally go to every year are now canceled. Is there anything for 2020 that you're still planning to go to or is still on?
So not no specific events. Like, I'm organizing some events for the Nomad Cruise community. We're trying this work and travel club. It's like a new idea that I'm working on now. but these will be like really small events, and it's more like a test. So what I'm building now is more like for the future. And but besides that, like there's nothing, no events or anything that I see in this year happening. Actually, there are many events happening here in Mallorca with social distancing, like even for up to 400 people. So it's possible, but the whole regulations when you're making bigger things, they're just crazy wherever you go, and the fines also. So I'll stay away from that.
Yeah, I can see that. So tell me more about this new project you're working on.
Yeah, so basically what happened was that I was looking for some ways to, now that we can't do the cruise anymore and we can't do any major big events, I wanted to make it easier for people to meet around the world, but not necessarily in places that are already get a lot of nomads, but places that are a little bit more off the track. Because, for example, you can go to Chiang Mai and meet some nomads, and you can go to Bali and do this, but you can't meet nomads in Zanzibar, right? Or you can't meet nomads in Cape Town. There's also like a very small community, and there's not really too many places where you can go snowboarding and stuff. And so basically the idea was to start a travel club where people can meet in different places around the world, and to make it easier, to get a bit off the track. And the other thing that I saw was that you meet a lot of people on your journeys. Like as a digital nomad, you meet people everywhere, like, and you basically build this huge network around you. But the network that you're building around yourself is not really connected in a way. And I think that as part of some kind of club or that I'm starting, it makes it easier for people to meet similar people again that all know each other, which is kind of what we had on the cruise. And that can create really, really great collaboration and actually make people successful much faster. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely like the concept. I'm just trying to imagine the way it'll work. I mean, how many people do you envision to be in this club?
I envision my goal is 5,000 people.
Wow. Okay.
So I would like to do this for 5,000 people. That is my goal, because then afterwards it gets anonymous again. And basically I would like to start a community for 5,000 people around the world that really supports each other throughout the whole year, that meets in different places. And that is something that I'm just now trying out in a very, very small scale. And then if this works, then we will open this up after Corona much, much bigger.
Okay, it definitely makes sense. I mean, at first, 5,000 sounds like a big number, but I guess if it is worldwide, it needs to be that big of a number, because
exactly.
Let's say if you only had 500 people, the chances of having, 5 people or, in Zanzibar at one time would be 0. But if you have 5,000, then it's possible to get 5 or 10 people together at once.
Yeah, and there can even be like 100 people at the same time in places. And I don't know if you remember from the cruise, like the reunions that we always organized afterwards.
Yeah, those were fun.
Where sometimes we had 100 people in a small town and they all kind of know each other. It's not that the 100 people hang out at the same spot all the time, but I just really, enjoyed this, for example, when we were in Rio de Janeiro with 100 people at the same time, and someone starts to book a helicopter trip and then everyone else join. You can do things that otherwise you wouldn't really do, because you need to look into how do I organize this? Or I don't have friends who have the money to pay for this, and then one person starts organizing helicopter trips, and then I think over 20 people went, over the next days, always going on this trip. And there are amazing experiences that you can have when you have a large group of people in the same place, and that group already kind of knows each other a little bit.
Yeah, or at least has some kind of connection, just
that has got some kind of connection. Because if you always, the thing is now the nomad life, it becomes so huge. There are 500 people or 1,000 people in Canggu, and all at the same time, but it's still like then it becomes more anonymous again, and people just hang out in small groups. Or one party you go there's 20 people, then the next day you meet another 20 new people. But I believe more like it's good to create lasting connections, and we also don't need to know everyone around the world. But it's good, like as a nomad, you're a little bit lonely sometimes, and it's good when you meet people again and you don't always need to ask the question where you're from, but you can actually say like, how is your e-commerce shops going? Did you work on your conversion optimization or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you
or even
start and you finish last, right?
Or even just like not even needing to ask those questions in the first place, and just feeling comfortable being around them, knowing that they probably have mutual friends, that they've been on a shared experience. And I remember this specifically when we were in, I believe it was Santorini, or even in Athens. I remember it was after the cruise. You did the reunion. Well, first the Santorini meetup was super fun, but then even 2 weeks later in Athens, which is a pretty big city, I would randomly see someone with the Nomad's cruise bracelet or the T-shirt, and even though I had not met them, or somehow didn't meet them or even see them on the cruise itself, like we would create a bond and just start hanging out, have dinner together or something, and it was like an instant connection, knowing that we were on this shared experience.
Yeah, you need to kind of create similar topics and similar knowledge for people, so that they can exchange each other, right? And that is also the experience of the Nomad Summit, right? That you're going together through this program, that you talk about similar topics, and people make progress. And with things getting like in the beginning, the biggest problem in the nomad life was to actually meet nomads, right? And now I think the problem is more that you can meet a lot of people, but it's still like oftentimes it's just like a one evening conversation, and they're actually really, really nice. So it would be nicer if you find some easier way to keep in touch with them, right? So yeah, there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah, I can see that. And I really liked, and I took a lot of ideas from being an attendee at Nomad Cruise, actually to the Nomad Summit, and one of it was these meetups afterwards. So what we did in Chiang Mai 2 years ago is after the Nomad Summit, I had organized a meetup on one of the islands in Koh Lanta, and a decent group of us, maybe 30 or 40 people, all flew down together, and most of us were on the same flight, which makes it super fun. We all shared a couple of these big vans together. And it was fun just extending the trip for another 1 or 2 weeks, hanging out, co-working together, doing cool stuff. The only reason why we didn't do it again this year was I realized it was exhausting to go straight from planning the conference to flying to an island and then being around and having needed to organize everyone again. So this last year we just did like small day trips, like going to the waterfalls and other kind of meetups, but I did like the concept of, having everybody stick around and meet up afterwards, and, especially to do like a trip together.
I mean, you could just postpone it for 1 week, right? You could say like next Sunday we're all meeting in Koh Lanta. Whoever wants to come there, we'll keep it like super informal and stuff. And the thing is that on these events, even though Nomad Cruise is also 2 weeks, I believe that, there's always so many people around. So you just you either make one friend, right? Or you make like 30 nice connections. But when you have these reunions or these events after these conferences, that's when you really make friends, right? Because then you have much more time. You have like 10 people or whatsoever that you spend time with in this and do things with. And that is oftentimes much more powerful in the way that you make friendships. Whereas on the shorter events, even Nomad Cruise, It's more like that you have a lot of like shorter conversations, and then you can't find the person, again on the
Yeah.
next for the next 3 months.
Well, even during the Nomad cruise, I remember on one of I think it was maybe Nomad Cruise 6, we did an excursion where we got into it was like some Jeep Safari or something. And I remember just being in the car, and driving for, half an hour, an hour. And during that time, I actually made, kind of the most genuine friendships and connections, because I finally had like an hour sitting next to like one person and talk, and just to talk to them, versus even on the boat, like you're just moving around. There's always someone else coming to, I don't want to say interrupt, but just, know, to join the conversation and say hi. There's always something, and it's always like, okay, let's get to the next thing. Let's get to the next thing. Let's go eat. Let's go do this.
You really need to make time. You need to schedule time with people to talk. And then you can, that you can do, and that brings you but otherwise it's basically the whole cruise is a big group conversation.
Yeah. So my kind of one regret is not going on one of those longer was it cross Atlantic cruises?
Yeah. It's not big difference. Well, I mean, you on the other ones, on the shorter ones, you can't really, but you can't really make these long conversations. You don't really take the time to then sit down with someone for 2-3 hours, which is something that you would do on a 2 weeks cruise. But I think the key is really to stick around and to like join some reunions or something afterwards, and that makes it more easy.
Yeah, and what's funny is for all the cruises, but also the Nomad Summit, I would always be in the location 1 month before, just assuming that there'd be a ton of people who would also show up a month before. I mean, we're digital nomads, we can work from anywhere. And if people are going to fly to, Gran Canaria in Spain, or to Chiang Mai, or to, to any of these places like Tbilisi, you would think that people would go a month before, settle in, go work, do stuff, and then do the conference or the cruise. But I noticed that most people were afraid to show up too early and not know anyone. So they would all come just like 2 days before.
Yeah. I think it's the best thing that you can actually do when you go to conferences is to arrive at least 2-3 days before, or like even 2 weeks or 1 week before, because like this, you really get to know people in smaller groups, and you already have like all your connections ready for the whole event. And then it's just more and more people joining. So it really makes sense to like even come a bit early. I would never go to an event just like on the day before it starts, because then you're kind of like 1 out of 1,000 or whatsoever, right? But if you come a little bit earlier, then you can make some nice connections before the event actually starts. And it's oftentimes you will get so much more value out of it. But then you still need to make like a move and maybe meet some new people and not your friends that you make in the first few days. That's what I see often.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And also, as a networking tip, if you call it that, is if you want to meet the speakers and the event organizers, they are going to be there 3 days before. The attendees can just show up the day of or the night before. But every time I've been a speaker somewhere, I have to be there 2-3 days before, sometimes for rehearsals or just to settle in, things like that. And I remember, and it's not just for my conference, but I was a speaker at Affiliate World, and I got there, 2 nights before to do some rehearsals and things like that. And that night, I just went to the hotel bar. And this is another tip: is stay at the hotel bar, like stay at the hotel, the host hotel if you can. I went up there and I saw 10 people sitting together. I didn't know if they were part of the conference or not, but I kind of just maybe assumed maybe they would be. So I just walked up and said, "Hey, you guys here for Affiliate World?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, come hang out." So I ended up making 10 friends right away. And it turns out that, some of them were working with the conference, some of them were the sponsors, some of them were the speakers. And these were, the highest level people who are, all making over 6 figures a year or building these $1 million businesses. And these people have plenty of time 2 days before the conference, but they're not going to have time during the conference itself or even after.
Yeah, that's true. Because once they've been on stages, then they're just going to be surrounded by people all the time. And but before the event actually starts, everyone is more shy and they are being left alone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I am looking forward to the future of both the Nomad Cruise as well as the Nomad Summit, but also just conferences and events in general. I think it was kind of a nice break from it for both of us to organize. But I have a feeling that even though right now we're like, oh, okay, this is a nice break, I think once things open back up, we're both going to get excited again and be like, okay, let's make it happen.
Yes, that might be true. Like at the moment, it's just like really difficult to find the way, right? But once things are easy to put together again, and then for sure.
Yeah, I love it. So Johannes, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a great time in Sri Lanka, right?
Yeah, will do. And if people want to check out, get on the mailing list for Nomad Cruise to see kind of upcoming events, but also check out your new program, how can they find it?
They just go to nomadcruise.com, and they can just subscribe there. We're going to send out more information there. And the other thing they can do is they can go on Facebook and join the Global Digital Nomad Network. That is a Facebook group that I started and has now over 50,000 members. So they could join there as well and say hello. And I'll also share more information there very soon.
Okay, awesome. And if you guys want to take a look at the talk from Johannes from earlier this year at the Nomad Summit, you can go to the show notes of this episode, which is 254 at travellikeabosspodcast.com, or just go on YouTube, search Nomad Summit. Johannes will have links to everything. You can watch Building a Remote Business While Traveling, the kind of story of Johannes' business that he created with his mother, but also Nomad Cruise. And if you guys want to get on the mailing list for Nomad Summit to see updates, just go to nomadsummit.com. But to be honest, I'm not sending out very many emails. I'm taking a big break from it. So if you want to hear what I'm personally up to, go to johnnyfd.com. Sign up for that email list there. Johannes, thanks again. Dankeschön. And enjoy Mallorca.
Yeah, Dankeschön. And enjoy Sri Lanka. And we'll keep in touch and chat very soon.
All right. Ciao.
Cool. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.